Welcome to Aurora Connects Season 2. This is episode 16 for Friday, December 4th, 2020, Costume Design. I am Aurora Theater Associate Artistic Director, Dawn Monique Williams, and as always, I am joined by Artistic Director, Josh Costello. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Dawn, how are you today?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm okay. Carrying on.
Yeah, it seems like that type of year.
Yeah.
Well, I want to let folks know that next week is our final episode of season 2, and we will be back in February with season 3, if you can believe it. So next week, Friday, December 13th, the 13th, I hope, is our final episode of season 2, and then we will rejoin you in the new year. As always, please comment on Facebook, YouTube, hit like, subscribe, and you can always email us at connects@auroratheater.org, connects@auroratheater.org. We love to hear from you, thoughts, ideas, who you want to see on the show, topics you want us to cover. We welcome it all.
We sure do. And I think Friday is December 11th, actually. But that's okay. But it'll be available on the 13th as well, because you can watch Connects after the fact on our website. We would love for everyone watching this to become an Aurora Theater Company member if you are not already. Members get access to all of our online programming. Aurora Connects is free for everybody, but we have lots of other stuff that is for members only, such as Dawn's August Wilson Book Club, all kinds of wonderful things, play readings. We just did a wonderful show from the Bay Area Theater Cipher. We've got another show coming up from Christian Cagigal in a little bit, and it's free for members and $20 for everybody else. So please go to auroratheater.org, check out our membership program, and while you are there, you can also make a donation by clicking the donation button at the top right. That helps us meet our goal of $100,000 for our fall fundraising campaign. We are well underway, but we still need more, and that's going to help us get through this very difficult time, and eventually be able to present live theater to you once again in our beautiful space. So thank you so much for your help with that.
Great. So since Josh already mentioned Sortilegios, which you can tune into, tonight, 7 o'clock tonight. If you're an Aurora member, you should get an email about it. And otherwise, you can buy that single ticket, as Josh said, and you'll have just enough time between this show and that to grab a bite and a drink and come back and see us. Now on to today's show. Today we are joined by some beloved Aurora designers, costume designers in the Bay Area, hair, wigs, all that fun stuff. So we welcome today to the show Ulises Alcala, Amy Bobeda, and Callie Floor. Welcome.
Oh.
Hi.
Welcome, you guys. So Ulises, I'm just gonna introduce each of you in turn. I'm gonna start with you, Ulises. You're on the faculty at the Cal State University East Bay. You have worked with the San Francisco Opera, Cal Shakes, Oregon Shakes, all over the place, and you most recently designed Bull in a China Shop, the costumes for Bull in a China Shop at Aurora. You also did Actually at Aurora, and what beautiful costumes you did. Thank you so much for those. So we're really excited to get into that. And Amy Bobeda, you have worked at Berkeley Rep for a long time, Bay Area Children's Theater, all over the Bay Area again, and other places as well. And you at Aurora did, you've done a bunch of different things for Aurora, but one of the fun ones was the Wigs for The Importance of Being Earnest, which I directed, and you did a great job on that. And it's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you.
And then Callie Floor, you have probably designed more costumes for Aurora than anybody else, as far as I can imagine. You've been designing for a long, long time at Aurora. You've also, you've worked at ACT for a long time. You've designed shows at Marin Theater Company, Berkeley Rep. Some of the shows that you've done at Aurora include Everything Is Illuminated, Widowers' Houses, The Heir Apparent, which we did together. That was so much fun.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah. At some point. There's Everything Is Illuminated. That was a great one too. But also going back as far as like A Delicate Balance and Salome, which was I think the first show I saw at Aurora after I moved back here. And there's some of your beautiful sketches. So it's so great to have all three of you on the show.
Yeah. The first show I ever did at Aurora was Terrestre Can in 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you, yeah. So I want to just talk a little bit about how one gets into costume design. What is it that attracts you to this field, and how did you personally end up finding yourself as a designer? Anybody want to take a crack at that? Let's go to Ulises first.
Me first, huh? I found theater in college, in undergrad, down in Southern California, and I never looked back. I auditioned for some shows, got in, and then found out that wasn't really my speed. So I started doing tech theater, and when I finished, I didn't want it to end. So I went on to grad school right away. And since then, I've just been, sort of working my way through costume shops. I worked at the San Francisco Opera costume shop for many years. I also worked before that at Santa Fe for a summer. So that was really interesting. And just sort of, once I started teaching, sort of found an end to the San Francisco Opera sort of world. For me, I was sort of looking for something different. I started teaching, and that's when I really started to design again. Because I had designed throughout college, and I did a little bit of here and there when I was working at SF Opera, but it wasn't until I started teaching that I really sort of jumped completely into costumes again.
And Amy, how about you?
I grew up in Santa Cruz, and so every winter my parents would take me to see Shakespeare Santa Cruz Panto that they did up on campus. And I think I was 10, and it was the first time they did The Wind in the Willows, which they wound up doing again when I was there in college, and I got to work on it. But something about watching that show when I was 10 years old, I was like, oh, theater design's a thing that people do with their lives. And it was this strange epiphany. And I went to college thinking I was going to be a set designer. But then it really was heartbreaking to me that sets lasted only for the run of a show, and that you would design and build this beautiful thing and then destroy it. But then I'd always been a seamstress and had always had a deep interest in hair and doing hair and makeup. And I loved that costumes were kept, and costumes had a life beyond the play and a life into future plays. So that sort of led to working for Shakespeare Santa Cruz, and then from there, moving on into the Bay Area.
I love that about costumes too. I love that, you can go down in the costume shop at Aurora or any theater and look through the costumes and see the little tags saying the name of the actor and the show that it was last used for. And you end up having these, costumes for future shows that are, built on pieces from previous shows. And there's something really lovely about that spirit coming through from a previous production. Yeah, it's really fun. Callie.
Well, let's see. My journey started, I grew up in Salt Lake City as part of the Greek community there. So it was a very kind of like insular community within a big insular community. And one of the things that saved me was getting involved in Greek folk dancing. So of course, there's no Greek folk dance store. So we had to make our stuff. And the people who were running our dance group would just get like postage stamps and any piece of research to kind of come up with these costumes. And then you were trying to figure out how to put them together. And so I went to college in commercial art and advertising, and lots of things that were really cool about that were actually, because there's lots of things about advertising and commercial art that are not so cool, but were really transferable to theater. And that is like working with within a set of really strict parameters to create a world and to collaborate. So for me, it was like about learning that theater was about people, and about collaboration and working directly with other people. And, you know, I'm not feeling very articulate, but that's kind of how I got there. And then I went to grad school, studied production design, but always really came back to costumes because I always loved making things with my hands and being involved in a really visceral way with my work. So.
Thank you. I want to. I love that making things with your hands. This is such a tactile experience of designing costumes. Talk to us. I'd love to hear about the process of designing a show, and sort of how you get from, you know, being hired, reading a script, like the, you know, initial talking with the director. It is so collaborative. Like that really is a big part of theater. To you know, all the way through the steps to a finished project, an opening night where everybody is wearing these clothes and every single thing on their body is like a really specific choice that somebody has made, that you have made, about how you want to bring this character to life and how you want to tell this story. So what are Ulises, let's go back to you. What are sort of the first steps in that process from reading a script to coming up?
I just read the script over and over again. I really do. And then I just jump into doing the research. And, you know, now with computers, it's so easy. I kind of miss the old way, you know, of going to the library and doing it that way. But it's super fast, and you can get it to your director super fast, which is nice. I just overdo it with my research. I just keep on doing research, and even once I've come up with a design or even a rough sketch, I still keep doing the research because I might find something better. Mm-hmm. And something that might spark something else. So really that's really where I go to. That's my fallback. Research. And
so what does that look like? What does the research look like? Is it books? Is it on the internet? Like what are you looking for in that research?
Yes, everything. I have a pretty big library now. Sort of over the years, I've built it up. But I just, of course, you go onto the, like I said, you go onto the computer to do all the research that you can. But I find that all my books are sort of my first love, so I go back to them. And the way I try to sort of create my boards so that you can sort of see how I'm getting there and sort of different ideas and how they relate to the final sketch where I'm going towards. Sometimes I throw things in there that have nothing to do with clothing, that have something to do with how I feel about the script, about something that the character says, something that the director and I have like sort of said and sort of said in sort of a passing, but sort of it kind of clicks something, and hopefully it'll sort of push some more ideas. Is that did I answer the question?
Yeah. Well, let me follow up actually, because so the research, it's one thing when you're doing a play that's set in a particular historical period, right? And then there's sort of an obvious research direction that you can go. Mm-hmm. And I think with Bull in a China Shop is a great example of that, where you had a period and you and Dawn wanted to tell a particular story in a particular way, and sort of were looking through that period for clothes that would express these characters and this story. But what about when it's a play that is not from a particular historical period, a play that's more just contemporary, like Actually? What's the research like for that?
Well, again, I go back to the script and to the characters and what they're saying about themselves and what the playwright is saying about them, how they interact, their psychological, world. I still do research. I still go and I go online. Probably that's what I do most then for stuff like that, because I still want to sort of see what young people are wearing these days. And so yeah, I still overdo it with the ideas and the research and the images. I just find that it's the best way to communicate to the director, the actors, the staff, costume staff, what I'm thinking about. Even if it's just, you know, I have these 3 ideas for the scarf. It could be this color scarf, it could be that color scarf. Well, this one's good for this, and this one looks good for her colorings. This one looks good with, you know, in conjunction with not just the costume, but the other character's costume or the set. If I'm lucky enough to be involved early enough in the set. So, yes. Still research. I was about to say before, I teach, and I keep trying to drive home with my students the point of doing research, and there's no such thing as too much research. You have to have too much research. You should know that play, and you should know that era, or you should know the psychological the psychology of all the characters and of the play.
We've collaborated deeply many times, so I will agree. You can never have too much research. I'm a sucker for all the visual aids. Amy, so I imagine that there are definitely some overlapping things with your process and Ulises, but you also do hair and wig design. So I wonder if you could tell us what that process is, and how you might collaborate with the costume designer if you are not also the costume designer.
Yeah, and at Aurora, everything I've done, I've just been wigs or wigs and makeup. I think I assisted Maggie Yule on a few costume things, but for the most part, I've come in just to focus on hair and makeup. And I think similar to what Ulises is saying, I too am a big researcher, both books and internet and also film, because so much of hair, it's a different kind of wearing, and a different kind of practicality needed for actors. And I think a lot of times it's one thing to be like, okay, I'm gonna put on a corset. I'll wear a corset in rehearsal, and this is gonna prepare me to wear a corset in the show. But in an era in which not all women regularly wear wigs, to then suddenly be in a corset and all the layers and a wig, and to like find yourself and find your character, I think becomes a lot more difficult for some actors. So for me, a lot of it too is sort of looking at how contemporary media is using hair and hair design. I think in my career, sort of, I'm grateful to Beyonce for being like one of the women that has like, and Lady Gaga as like 2 women who are icons of wearing hair, and sort of like increase the popularity, and like the public discussion of wearing hair to the degree that it, I think, becomes more comfortable, especially for actors who, like, a lot of times I'll work with actors and it's the first show where they've worn a wig, and it's such a vulnerable, new and different experience for them. So for me, a lot of it plays into psychology. Like in cosmetology school, the big thing they would say is like, you'll always have a client who will come to you with a picture of Jessica Alba and want Jessica Alba's haircut, and you have to tell them, I can give you this haircut, but you will not look like Jessica Alba. So that sort of became the running joke in cosmetology school, and that's something that we can all relate to when we've gone to like get our hair done, or in similar situations where you have this idea, but it may not correlate. Like what Ulises was saying about scarves, like the scarf may be great, but doesn't go with someone's coloring, or it does. So I spend a lot of time like thinking about that with the actor, and so much of it is the designers usually. Like Callie has always come to me with really amazing research and really beautiful renderings of like the perfect placement of curls. So then that has to factor into the story and how the wig will wear throughout the play, how the wig will wear throughout when it's being maintenanced. You know, a lot of wigs don't get major maintenance more than once or twice in a run. So that factors in, as well as what the crew is able to do. But a lot of it plays into actor comfort and what they're comfortable with in using a wig versus using their real hair. You know, like what kind of damage could develop over time if we're using their real hair, or if it's about a haircut, is it a haircut that they're comfortable with in all of the hours of the day in which they're not on stage for the run of the show. So it plays into the actor relationship a little differently than designing costumes, because sometimes it doesn't get to just live in the theater.
Yeah,
absolutely. Really a personal relationship, isn't it? I mean, more than anything, because you're touching people's faces, and you know, I've become aware over time that you really have to ask somebody, even when you're working with them, if you can touch their hair. People are very, you know, and it's like, can I touch your hair? Can I move your hair out of the way? And I think that you've got a real, you know, you're very relaxed with people, and they seem to really trust you coming in there, you know, into the dressing room and kind of messing around with them.
And like, that's what I've always loved about hair, is sort of historically the intimate relationships that we have with our own hair, and like culturally and in lineage, the relationships that develop between people, like mothers and daughters and siblings, that develop around hair. And I didn't really realize when I was younger that that would like be a job where you would develop intimate relationships with people around their hair, even if it wasn't hair they'd grown. So
yeah.
But it makes such a difference to actors too. I've definitely seen actors who are struggling to find the character, and then they get their hair done, or they get their wig, or they get a costume piece, and it all clicks. And they're like, oh, this is who I am. Just having it on, it just brings something out of them, and seeing themselves in a new way can really help them get in touch with the story they're telling and the character they're playing.
You know, for me, the beginning of theater is really about a ritual experience. To me, it's kind of a religion. It's the religion I kind of grown to practice. And if you think about theater as a religious experience, it's about a transformation. And if you're in sync with, you know, if the director as the God of the world that we're creating is, you know, very true to the script and has done a really good job of casting and communicated really well with all of the collaborators, then it's you know, it's always a sacred space, but then you're creating this incredible transformation. And when an actor says, now I feel it, it's like, it's all the work they've done. The costume isn't doing the work. It's like, it just kind of like, it's like a little shrink wrap into all the work they've done, and then it's all there, and then they can carry it on stage. And that is like the most gracious experience I can ever have with somebody, is that kind of collaboration and the transformation. So of course, like getting the hair right, or getting, you know, even the right eyebrow shape on somebody can really, all of a sudden, there they are. But it's the work, it's helping them with the work they've done and the work you've done as a director.
Callie, Amy mentioned your renderings, and Amanda even has already put some up for display. So I just wonder, in terms of the design process, so you've done your research, you've read the play a million times, you've had some initial conversations with the director, and now you're moving into renderings. Like, what is that phase? How much revision do you typically
I do a lot of sketching. I do a lot of loose sketching. For me, it's a thought thing. You know, it's like I start to really think when I'm starting to draw. And you know, it's, so you can see a lot of my drawings are really loose, and this was Salamania, and it was a lot of found stuff. Oh, that's Monster Builder. So that's a bot show, but you still want to kind of get ideas down. But I always, even if it's a really finished sketch, like I think Heir Apparent, I did really finished sketches because we built a lot of those plays. To me, those clothes, to me, it's a roadmap. It's not a destination. So it's a tool for me. It's a tool for communication. It's also, it can get, like when you have that first rehearsal and people are so excited about all the possibilities and what we're going to create together. If you have pretty sketches, it just gets people jazzed. It's really fun. But it's also, I always think it's not the real thing, because the real thing is the actor in the costume. So I always, even if I do a finished sketch, it's never like the end of the story. Like nobody should feel like, oh, this is how it has to be, unless we spend a lot of time building something and we can't backtrack at the last minute. That's a practical consideration, but it's a roadmap for me. But it is a lot of just sketching and taking, like Ulises says about research, is taking that research and trying to kind of refine it and distill it into something. You know, and you know, it's like it just puts things in my head. Like I'll look if it's a period, I mean, even a modern show, you know, you look at pictures of an environment, like you're doing a skeleton crew, you know, you look at pictures of Detroit and you think, okay, what is Detroit? What makes this Detroit? And you're thinking about that as you're drawing, you know, and then the drawing layers, like, oh, they come in with a parka and you draw that parka, you know, what's the shape of that parka? What should I be looking for? So it just kind of makes it, kind of embeds it for me in my brain.
Amanda, will you bring up that picture from Heir Apparent again? And Callie, can you talk to us about those specific costumes? Because I believe both of those were things that we built.
Yeah, and it's a period show, so it's really fun to talk about period clothes. So I didn't build the men's because you can find men's stuff, but that's Elizabeth Carter, who is magnificent and wears clothes really well. And I knew that if I gave her a big dress, she'd be able to carry it. So that's a good thing, because you don't want to give somebody something that they're not prepared to deal with. And then of course, Aurora is a smaller space, so she's going to take up a lot of visual space in that theater. So you have to think about that. Like, but you know, we did a drawing. We have this. There are nuances to this character. She's an older lady. She's a rich lady. She's a mother, but she's not old. You know, she's very imperious. You know, purple is a very imperious color. I also had to work with the fact that I'm renting clothes for most of the men, you know, because it's, you know, building men's coats is a whole, Ulises knows, building coats for men is a whole other thing with a 2-person shop, basically a 2 or a 3-person shop. But when we did, I don't know how, like Josh really wanted that collar. And I don't know if I'd drawn it or is something you had found, but somehow it ended up on the sketch and he's like, if nothing else happens, I want that collar. So, you know, we made sure that collar, like that was part of the sketch and it made it onto the costume. There's also, you know, you've got to like rehearsal corsets. It's a very corseted period and there's a lot of fabric in the skirt. So you get that stuff into rehearsal early enough so that they're comfortable moving around, you know, so none of this is a big surprise when you get to tech. I don't think Amy was available for Wigs. I had to hire somebody else for Wigs for this show. And Elizabeth, and then the other.
Leah Davis was in a wig.
Yeah, it was in a wig too. So then you're like working again with, you know, the actor's natural looks and the natural texture of their hair and making it look like it belongs on their head, you know, even though it's a period wig. So yeah.
Can we bring up that picture from Bull in a China Shop again too, and talk a little bit about that one with Dawn and Ulises? I'd love to hear. You know, I think those costumes were so just so evocative of the characters and true to the period, but also, you know, gave the women such a sense of power. And I'd love to hear your process on how those came together.
Well, I mean, Ulises and I have a little bit of a shorthand to begin with because we have such a long history together. So Ulises has costumed me as an actor, and we've been colleagues, and we've traveled together. So we benefit from a sort of shared experience and taste in some things. And Ulises knows I love anachronism, and so I'm always looking for how we can marry periods. I love a mixed period. So Ulises can almost always guess that I'm going to be like, but how can we break the rules a little? And with Bull, I remember especially being like, but I got to have pants. Somewhere there's got to be pants. And because he does the research, he actually found pants, and I wasn't being as innovative as I thought.
I mean, you have to do a lot of research to find those pants, but they are out there. And I remember when you said that, I was like, don't worry, I'll find it. I know I've seen it. And since then, I've actually found even more information about pants during that time period. Yeah, I mean, it's just at the turn of the century, and then it goes through the 30s. And so it was interesting trying to sort of have them sort of wearing something that could go for 1900, and then work for the next 10 years. And then, in the 20s, sort of move into the next 10 years. It was fun. Also, we were trying to be sort of marrying modern and these different periods. So we decided early on to not have wigs. We had talked about is like, what if it's all boom, it's modern from here up. And the different actors were, can I get my hair cut? Because most of them have short hair. And we're like, yeah, do it. Shorter, color, everything, whatever you want. And I thought we were being so modern and so innovative. Well, I found out that Baz Tazwell, who did Hamilton, also did that. They had the same idea about the hair. And I was like, there we go. Great minds think alike. so a little connection to Mr. Tazwell. And it was really interesting trying to find, because the skirts, they start at the floor and they sort of through the teens and aughts move up slowly, and then they become this 20s period, and then there's of course the script, which is written, I don't know, it's so back to back. The scenes are just back to back, and there's not a lot of time for them to actually change, to take things off. So it was like a ballet. I felt like it was like I was watching a ballet the first run through I saw, because we had talked about it. We had meetings. Like I said, we all wanted to have these little meetings beforehand, sort of to think about things to take off and put on. But when I saw the first run through, it was beautiful. It was beautifully choreographed. And that's what you want to see when you see something like that. You don't want to see fumbling. You don't want to see, problems. And, and of course, during tech, we had a few little mishaps here and there, but that's what it's for, right? And so, yeah, the process, I mean, it sort of worked out. I just had to sort of scene by scene, character by character, just like we're taught in in Design 101, just sort of really, really be patient with the script, be patient with yourself, that you're going to find the right way to do things, and that it's going to make sense. And if you're not doing something right, something's not working, that you have the collaborators around you, your colleagues will say something, will help you. So
yeah. And just for a flex, Amanda, I don't know what Merry Wives pictures you have, but with Merry Wives, we did like full mixed period, but we went very big hair. We wigged everybody we could. So right there, that's Will Dow, a Bay Area actor. He's wigged, and Jeremy, the other actor, was also wigged. And then it was Katherine Castellanos in that picture too. I think she was maybe not wigged.
I don't know if we wig her. We might have done a piece.
But I mean, there was big hair all throughout with Merry Wives.
So just
production that Dawn directed with Ulises designing at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yes.
And it was a mix of Elizabethan and also 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And then this sort of motif of flowers sort of popping out from everywhere, all over the set, and going up their costumes. And it was a lot of fun. It was one of those moments where you're just like, yes, it worked. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And something that came up for me for the first time in my career was at my time spent at OSF, but Callie, you mentioned it too, so I kind of want to, I mean, it's open for all of you, but I kind of want to turn to Amy with this, is this idea of how you can behave with cultural sensitivity when wigging somebody or asking someone to use their natural hair, and how at OSF, I know for us, it became a very big deal to make sure that we had a stylist on staff who could work with textured hair, in particular Black hair, but also as we go to wig different actors of different ethnicities, really finding the right textures to build those wigs and to make sure, as you said, Callie, that it looked like it would grow from that actor's head. So I wonder, Amy, in your practice, where you're running into these things, if you're finding any resistance in theaters, or how that's working out for you.
That's funny because I was thinking about it when Ulises was talking about Hamilton, because something that fascinates me so much about that show is that their aim is natural hair, but there's still a lot of wigs in the show. So they've got wigs that are mimicking their own hair to protect their natural hair for a lot of them. And that is something I see becoming increasingly important, is that wigs are now being worn more to protect natural hair. And I think in the Bay Area, there's the gift of it being a very diverse community that like Ashland does not have. I remember being up there working on show transfers at the time when they were like, we don't have anyone to work on textured hair. Like there aren't even barbers that actors can go to in this community. And to me, it was always a gift to be like, here are 5 barbershops in the area that I trust, especially when out of town actors working from big cities would come in and be like, is Berkeley a city? Can I get a real haircut from a barber? And so that I think has always been a big gift. But in wigs, there is a difficulty that like a lot of women with natural textured hair may be wearing wigs in real life, but not necessarily wearing wigs that are mimicking natural textured hair. And in theater, we're looking often to mimic natural textured hair. So like we're looking for something mimicking life when a lot of commercial wigs are looking for something else. So that becomes difficult in trying to purchase wigs, which then you get into building. And I haven't found a lot of companies that build wigs of various textures, which I think is another big issue in the industry. And like for me, it is becoming increasingly important to be able to provide multiple textures and colors of hair that seem natural. And at the same time, it's so costly too. Like in the same way that it's incredibly costly to get white hair that's not synthetic. Like it's crazy expensive because someone will have had to have grown out very long white hair and then sold it. So I think like a lot of things play into the accessibility, and then for theaters, the cost prohibitiveness of accessibility and providing not just like what is true to the show, but what is true to the actor and their hair. Because to some extent, like the wig needs to be a combination of their character and of that person's own hair. And I think that's where like the melding starts to come in. But there are a few shops in the Bay Area, wig shops, that have always been very helpful to me in the process, but that a lot of things come down to building when because there's not a lot being offered for theatrical wigs versus like commercial wigs are going to be lace front, but they're designed to cut away the lace, where in theater we want to preserve the lace. So we're doing something a little different than how the culture is wearing the wigs. But because wigs are becoming more popular in the culture, it's easier and cheaper to get nice wigs. So it's complicated.
It is, and such a fascinating discussion. I just did a production of Piano Lesson back before the shutdown, and 2 of those actors are in the process of growing out locks, which of course is not necessarily a period appropriate look, though it is a natural condition that some people's hair has been able to do for a millennium. So the question of, do we go with the anachronism and have the actor have their locks? How do you wig an actor who has locks? Can you afford to, so one actor, it worked for the character to let him just have his locks. And for the other actor, they found somebody who could do a crochet thing to make it look like he just had a small, it was fascinating. I'm fascinated by the work that costume designers and hair and wig, I'm fascinated. And the bigger questions it asks, like as we go forward, like with Bull, us just making the decision to say we're going to let the hair be contemporary and we're not going to, concern ourselves with, the like verisimilitude to the period.
Well, and for that show, that choice made such good sense because the language did the same thing, right? It was a way of visually expressing what the play itself was doing. And there's always such interesting choices that get made. One of the other interesting things about being a costume designer or a freelance director is that you're always working at different companies, right? You're doing a show here and a show there and bouncing around. And some of those companies have more resources, some of them have less, some of them have bigger spaces where you're further away from the actors, some you're right up close. And I'm curious about your takes on Aurora and what makes working at Aurora different from working at other companies. What are the specific challenges, the specific positive things about Aurora? What makes Aurora different from other companies where you've worked?
Well, I'll start because I have a lot of thoughts about that. One of the things I've loved about working at the Aurora is that I feel like you guys always choose the right place for your space. I don't feel like you're shoehorning a show that's too big. I think that the directors that work there really utilize the space to its best ability. This very intimate setting. The thing you have to really think about though is that it's like being in your living room with somebody. So stuff that you could get away with on a big stage, you cannot get away with at the Aurora. People will see. The first show I ever did was Therese Racan, and I had to rent a lot of those shows because it's like 1860s. It's a lot of fabric. It's a lot of understructure. So I built a couple of things, but I had to rent from American Musical Theater in San Jose, had the right period clothes, but they were a little bit ratty. And one of the poor actors had dresses that had mended stuff and people in the audience could see it. And it was like, oof.
And in a bigger space, they wouldn't have been able to see that.
They would not have been able to see it. Then you just pray that it makes it for the run of the show. But yeah. So, but that's the only time where I really felt like, this is, but you just have to design, you just know that the details are going to get seen, which is great. And it's just something you had to consider. When I did A Delicate Balance, there were so many people on stage with their shoes. Like Tom had people like lounging around on the chair. I, painted all the bottoms of the shoes, solid colors, just because you could really see it in that space. Because so many people were lounging around on the sofa and on the ground, with their feet up, but you could really see it. So that's the fun part. And I always feel at home at the Aurora. I think the vibe is really great there. You know, I always felt that way with, like, Barbara set the culture that way. Tom carried it through, and you know, when you were made artistic director, I thought, yeah, I think it's a really good cultural environment to be in, because people, I always felt like I was welcome there, like y'all aren't doing you a favor to hire you, which is not the case in a lot of places.
Well, thank you for saying that. I do think that the culture that Barbara created and that Tom continued is that's such a big priority for me, is continuing that.
That's who you are. So
it's just a great space. I just love that you're just surrounding the stage. I love a 3/4, and this is just right in your lap. You could see a lot of the detail. You can actually spend time doing little things because you know the people will be seeing it. Mm-hmm. It's just so nice. It's just I love a small space. We used to have, well, we still have a space like that at school, but we don't use it as often anymore. And it makes me sad, because the kind of intimate theater that you guys have, really, I mean, I think I love taking people there for the first time, because they're like, oh my God, that was so, it was like they were just speaking to me. I was like, I know. And I remember seeing the first show I saw there was, I cannot remember the name. It was around the early aughts. And, but it was, oh gosh, I can't remember the name, but I just remember, because it was a play where the people were talking at the same time on different parts of the stage, but it was beautifully done, choreographed in a way that they would be speaking a little bit higher on one side and then a little lower on one side, and then it would shift the other way, and then somebody else would come in, and then the lighting and what they were doing. I just thought that was so. It was so well done. I was really taken back. And I remember first time I went to see it, I was like, that was awesome. I'm gonna go see this. I'm gonna go to this place, as much as I can. And I did. I ended up bringing a lot of classes to see shows before I ever designed there. And every time the students, even if it was a controversial piece, where they were like, oh my gosh, that was, really crazy. I can't believe that, but it was like, but they came away with something. They actually learned, and they learned the beauty of theater. And that's what I always feel like is really important as an educator, just to really get young people to appreciate what we do and what the type of storytelling that we do. Because if we don't, there's no theater. But I've always just really felt, as a designer, the times that I've been there, I always felt very taken care of. Yeah. And I was always, if I had a question, I right away somebody got back to me, Amanda or Dawn or somebody else, would jump in and answer the questions, because I'm having a lot of different projects going on. It's good to have these questions answered. But I don't know. You guys are awesome. That's all I could say.
Well, thank you. That's what I was hoping you would say when I asked the question.
I think for me, similarly, like the intimacy of the space and even the intimacy of the dressing rooms, because for me, that's where most of my time is spent, looking at people in the mirror, as we're arranging hair and makeup together. But just sort of the family and community feel that develops there backstage, that's very different than any other theater I've worked for. Yeah.
Yeah, our dressing room is down in our basement, and we have our costume stock and our prop stock, and it's all sort of stuffed in there. And there's like a little bit of space set aside for costume fittings, and a little, curtain and a mirror in the corner where actors can go and change their clothes. And it is certainly very intimate.
Even backstage.
I was just going to say, as we draw close to our time together toward our hour, I would love to just hear from each of you how you're spending this time. Theaters are shut down, and I've been doing like a lot of Zoom stuff, and costumes haven't always been the main priority. So I just wonder how you're keeping your hands busy, and are you still designing? What are you doing?
I've been doing a Christmas show for almost 30 years. I'm aging myself, called California Rebels. And we did an archival show, but we also did some new content. So we did a video shoot of a dance in Muir Woods, and we did a video shoot of some kids dancing at the Oakland Zoo. And you can see the whole skyline of Oakland, which is really cool. And we're using a lot of archival stuff. And then, we did a green screen. It's like, getting together in the age of COVID. How do you do that? And of course, the film and TV industry has come up with really good protocols, because they've got the time and resources to figure it out. So we did some green screen stuff, and then it's going to be, it's being put into a virtual set and mixed in. So that's the green screen, and then we put it into this virtual set designed by Peter Crompton, who was a sculptor and painter, and so his stuff is always very sculptural, but it's using a lot of projections, which are being used more and more in theater, but now it's very transferable to online. So if anybody's interested in not the standard Christmas stuff, California Rebels, it's called Unruly Magic, and if you go to californiarebels.org, you can get tickets. So hopefully it will be an experience you can't have any other way. So not just, putting a play online. But that's one thing I did. I do a lot of watercolor painting. I'm out and about San Francisco with Urban Sketchers. Baking, I've always been a baker. And developing a class for City College in Intro to Costume. So very grateful for that. I need to pick your brain, Ulises.
Absolutely. Whenever. I've been teaching. I've been teaching the whole last in the spring, and then again in the fall, and all online. So learning how to teach online is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So it's been interesting, shall we say. So I spent a lot of time just grading things and creating content for the class. And we also did a fall production at school. It was online on Zoom. And I was the advisor to the costume designer. So we had a student designer, so that was fun. And it was Blood at the Root.
Blood at the Root. I watched it, and we plugged it a little bit here on Connects. Good. And I noticed there were quite a few costume changes.
We did our costume design.
So how did you navigate that with?
It was interesting, and I learned a lot of things: what to do, what not to do. The school does not like us buying online and sending it straight to the actors, because it looks like we're stealing it. when they put together their receipts, it's like it looks like I'm just buying and sending to people around the world, well, around the country. So we learned that we can't do that. But we ended up working out ways to do things. So it was interesting. I think we will know more when we do the spring musical, which is an original piece. They're creating, it's called Songs in the Time of Pandemic. So that should be interesting, and I'll be the costume designer, but we'll see what that brings. Not sure what that's gonna be like. Besides that, I realized that I really like puzzles. like just big old time consuming puzzles. Over the summer, I did a bunch and it was just really fun. I stopped once I started teaching again, but yeah, that and a little bit of sketching here and there. It's hard for me to just sketch what I really want to sketch when there's no script. So I'm excited to have scripts again and projects. Waiting by the phone. No, just kidding. No, just, it's interesting. I miss a lot of the contact because I'm a hugger. So it's hard, but I'm living my life best I can.
Yeah. And Amy, you are defending your thesis, will have defended a thesis
tonight. Well, by the time this airs.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, so I am finishing my MFA in creative writing and poetics. I did earlier in the summer work on a project with the Quinnen Street Project, which is a Bay Area nonprofit that brings theater education to various schools. And so we did a really cool, we filmed a Zoom production meeting that also sort of acted as a production meeting, but taught children what we do in a production meeting. So that was fun. It was like rehearsing the ultimate dream production meeting. So I worked on that, but yeah, mostly this is time for me to work on my master's, which is lovely since I'm not getting anywhere near anyone's hair.
Thank you all so much for joining us. I so hope that I can employ each of you very soon. And it's just lovely to see you and to talk with you.
Hey, thank you.
so much.
Ulises, can we real quick, as we wrap this up, we like to give a shout out to a different organization in our community that's doing good work. And Ulises, you suggested Pioneers for Hope, which HOPE is standing for Helping Our Pioneers Excel. Do you want to tell us real quick about that organization?
So it's an online. It's a school, CSU East Bay. We have a group called Pioneers for Hope, and the costume shop has worked with them. We've made quilts for them for underprivileged students or students who are having problem with monetary help, food and homes. So they're great. They're a great group, and they're really doing a lot, especially during this time when a lot of students are having a really hard time with money and with food. So.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Yes, the program aims to provide at-risk students with meals, temporary housing assistance, emergency funds, and referrals to resources that correlate to students' success, health, and wellness. They are at csueastbay.edu/hope. So we encourage everyone to check that out. Thank you all again so much for joining us.
Yeah,
we're going to wrap this up.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Friends, tonight is Sortilegios at 7 p.m. If you are already an Aurora member, that is a member benefit and no additional cost to you. You can sign up and watch that. It is not too late to become an Aurora member. You can do that on our website. We have a lot of exciting stuff happening in December. Sortilegios tonight. There's a Year with August book club, and the membership gives you access to all the previous sessions of that. We have one of our producing partners, American Stage. We have Nosotros La Gente will be released later this month. So a lot of good reasons to still get an Aurora membership. If you don't want to have an Aurora membership, you can get a single ticket for Sortilegios at $20. And you can do all of that through our website.
And when you are on our website, you can click the donate button at the top right. We've been trying to raise $100,000 for a campaign to help keep Aurora going through this very, very difficult time. We want to send a big thank you to Rob Allen from Blue Heron Bikes, who made a donation recently. Rob is the son of one of our board members, and Blue Heron Bikes is great. I got my cargo bike there that We used to get both kids and 4 bags of groceries on that thing and bike around Berkeley. We had a Christmas tree on it one time. And Rob's always great about fixing up our bikes when we show up with various broken things. So shout out to Rob and Blue Heron Bikes there on Gilman. But if you'd like to donate, again, please go to auroratheater.org and click the donate button at the top right.
And as a reminder, you can reach us anytime at connects@auroratheater.org, connects@auroratheater.org. We'd love to hear from you. A reminder that next week, Friday, December 11th, will be our last episode of season 2. We will have a backstage tour with our incredible technical director, Cameron Swartzell. So please tune in next Friday, the 11th. And until then, have a great week and thanks for staying connected.